Adam Smith is particularly important to me. He's part of the foundation of the research that I'm doing right now. Something very important is about 250 years ago. My hope is to convince you at the end of this lecture that he's not just did something then, but he can do something now. I want to start with where I was circa 2000 as an experimental economist who just received my PhD. So here's a very basic game, all the trust game. There are two people. They come into a laboratory. They don't see each other. They sit in a computer terminal. They're going to make a decision one time, and it's going to be all over. And when they're done, they're going to be paid amounts that you see on the screen. We have this concept of utility that we teach, that more is preferred to less. Technical terms, local non-satiation. There's always some element by which you prefer to it, and something that's preferred to. In this case, it's money. And that $40 is greater than $25, so we'd say the utility of person 2, if they got to make a decision, would be greater for $40 than for $25. So what would person 2 do? They would choose to play deep rock, go down. Now knowing that, what would person 1 do? Well, person 1 would look between choosing $10 or 0, because person 2 is going to play down. So 10 is greater than 0. By local non-satiation, utility for person 1, that's what that big U in the subscript 1 means, on $10 is greater than utility of 0. And so we expect person 1 to play A and end the game. Both will go home with $10 and that's it. So we're predicting that 1 will just end the game, and right off the bat, we're wrong half the time. So there's some element where more is preferred to less. And that's why 1 is playing down. Understand? So I'm plant that thought right. And then, what happens here? Now 2/3 of person 2's are not doing what we would predict. They're playing right. And 1/3 are playing down. If you look at that, you have 98 people and another 46. That's 144 people. And 77 of them are not doing what economics predicts from that basic course you got in economics. How do we make sense of this? What do we do now? We're failing half the time. Well, we go back to our tools, and we're going to postulate, well, there's some other way, something else that's going on here. So we're going to keep our same basic idea of utility for people, but we got to change those scales. So we thought that more money brought the scale down like this, but it's not happening. People are doing this. They're using less money, and that's what they're choosing to do. They prefer less money to more. How do we make sense of that? Well, we say, oh, they have some social preferences for this other person. It's not just them. They're worried about the other person. It's reciprocity. I want to do something for them because they've done something for me. Or it's inequality aversion. I don't like the fact that it's 40 and 0. I'd rather have 15 and 25. And we add that, create that new utility function there called V2, such that with $25 and $15, that is heavier than $40 and 0. With that, we can say, voila, utility maximization still works, people are still doing it. At the same time, when people are looking at these results, there's another game. What about what's called the dictator game? And I put the game in quotation marks because it's kind of an odd and bizarre game, because only one person does something, and what they do is final. In the dictator game, a participant is splitting $40 with another person. Now it's just like what person 2 is doing, splitting $40 with another person. Decision is final. They have this participant earn the right to be able to make this decision. They go and take a series of GMAT questions. And the ones that score the highest and then get to split $40. Now, they also went through some elaborate procedures such that this person, this dictator, is not known to the experimenter or anyone else in the room. So that is, when the experimenter is paying them out the money, they don't know the name and what they did. They have the result, but they can't put the name to the result. So they're blind to the experimenter and they're blind to the other participants. And what did they find? Out of 36 people, one person gives $1. 97% keep everything. We just showed at the same time, roughly the same time period, 2/3 of the people are giving up $15. They changed it a little bit, another treatment, where now the experimenter actually knows what they're doing. They can write down the name, Taylor Smith. They gave $1. They had to look him in the eye, more or less, when they came out. Paid him $39. Oh, that means you gave $1 to that. When that happens, yet they still earn that right, you now get 7 people giving some money, as much as $15. Just because the experimenter knows what you're doing. And then they take away that you didn't even earn it. You just come into the room, you sat in this seat, you get to decide, and the experimenter knows what you're doing, and all of a sudden, 80-some% of the people are getting some money. So now how do we reconcile these results with the previous results? Just make sure you don't think that this one study is kind of an outlier. Oxby and Sprague, 6 years later, replicate it, and what do they find? 100% of the people keep everything. So how do we make sense of it? Sometimes people are giving up $15 a year. You can't get one person to give up $1. Now we could postulate, oh, well, they're in this game. There's some set of preferences. This other person, the interaction makes them feel good, and they're going to, then with that utility, give some money. But what do you do with these other experiments? You postulate there's something else going on? Is there a way to put these two things together? And part of it is going to take through how we think about this as an economist. So we go look at this, and we say, how is it that these person twos are behaving? How are they interacting with this other person? And we say, oh, well, they must be preferring that. So that's how we'll postulate. From my own experience, I think that people want to give it, they want to be nice, because somebody did something nice to me, or I don't like the idea that the differences in payoffs are large. And what I'm saying is in terms of this word, behavior. Behavior in the 20th and 21st century applies to a lot of things. If you look at a pond, you can say that the water behaves in a certain way. If you drop the stone in it, the waves will have particular motion. The water will react with each other. We can say the waves are behaving. And that's definition number 5 in the Oxford English Dictionary. That the manner in which a thing interacts under specified conditions or circumstances or in relation to other things. Think of it, we talk about behavior. Behavioral economics is a big term that we use today. We're thinking of people behaving in relation to other people, and why are they behaving the way they are? Now, to Adam Smith, that would be an odd way of thinking about the word behavior. This definition wasn't around in the 18th century. Samuel Johnson published a dictionary in 1755, where he had 5 different meanings and sense of the word behavior. None of them dealt with things. They always dealt with people. And notice the words that get put in here. The manners of behaving oneself, whether good or bad. It's good or bad. You're making the valuation of what people do. Or even stronger, there's conduct, general practice, course of life. Those are the definitions that Adam Smith used. He would use for behavior. But that wasn't his word of choice if you read the Theory of Subjects. There is another word he uses 308 times in a 338-page book, which means about once every page he's using this word. He's not using behavior. Adam Smith's word of choice is conduct. It's not just what people are behaving, how they act in relation to other people. It's a deeper word about how they are viewing themselves. It's regularity of life. The quote that Samuel Johnson uses to explain what big conduct means, though all regard for reputation is not quite laid aside, is so low that very few think virtue and conduct of absolute necessity for preserving it. I found by accident this Charles Smith is a synonym discriminated from the late 19th century, and he discriminates between behavior and conduct this way. Good conduct is meritorious and virtuous. The behavior may be natural or artificial. You don't say that conduct's natural or artificial because it's deeper. It means something else. It means you're virtuous or you're meritorious. And there's something more going on when Smith is using the word conduct. He's pulling in something deeper about how you view yourself. But that's not the word that we see used in describing what's going on in the laboratory. We use the word behavior. I want to aim to tell you that maybe Adam Smith was adding something in to how he observes human conduct. Adam Smith has changed how I think about what I see going on in the laboratory. His starting point isn't just that more is preferred to less. He's got something else going on. He makes an assumption about humanity that you didn't see when we solved the game, the trust game. 20% of all mammals live together in groups of others. 80%, which I think is pretty large, only meet up to mates and perhaps where they're young, and after that they go their solitary ways. But 20% of mammals live in groups. The scheduled pattern of how they interact is to be with other members of their own tribe. He doesn't put this as an axiom, he takes it for granted. But he talks about this counterfactual case. Suppose it were possible that a human creature could grow up to manhood in some solitary place. He's saying, suppose that was the case, because it's obviously not the case. We grow up with other people around us. And he says over the phrase, bring him into society. So the first axiom that Smith has about the human animal is that it's social, it's embedded. When I talked about the utility function, it was always indexed by I. Adam Smith would index every individual by I in community C. There's always a group of people around the person. It's not just that we live with other animals. So gazelles live with lots of other gazelles, but the idea about having lots of gazelles together isn't that maybe the lion gets the other one and not you. But it's not because of anything particularly enjoyable about living with the other gazelles, it's just that there's safety in numbers. But primates, in particular, of all the mammals, it gets pleasure out of being in other people's company. And as Smith puts it, nothing pleases us more than to observe in other men a fellow feeling with all the emotions of our own breast. Nor are we ever so much shocked as by the appearance to the contrary. So we feel good when other people feel what we feel. We want to be part of feeling with them. So now we live in groups, we get pleasure out of this, and now we're moving into where humans are different than other animals, what I might call the judgment axis. Not only do we feel, but I think about your feeling and how you think about your feeling, and I evaluate it by how I would think and feel about it. And so as he puts it, I judge of your resentment by my resentment, of your love by my love. I neither have nor can have any other way of judging about it. So there's this sense that we have about how you feel about things, and I look at myself and I will judge that too. But we're passing judgment of how you are feeling and thinking about the situation. We're feeling in groups and we're judging, saying, but we go one step further and we call it the duty axis, where our continual observations upon the conduct of others insensibly, I might say unconsciously, lead us to form to ourselves certain general rules concerning what is fit and proper, either to be done or to be avoided. I now, by watching what other people are doing and how they feel, and if they don't feel what I feel and are upset with me, this makes me upset. And so I learn how they react, and I learn how they're dealing with the same kind of situation. And I commit to myself, what kind of person am I going to be? There's a tendency in the 21st century to think of duty as something that's being imposed upon me, because I really want to be doing something else, but my duty tells me to do this. For Smith, he didn't see duty that way. Duty was, what is it do I need to be, and how is it do I act, such that I fit in with society, so that I can have them in fellow feeling with me. What is fit and proper for me to do? That is a whole lot deeper than how people are behaving with respect to others. Molecules in a flask behave, but humans conduct themselves. So we're adding in this notion of how I want to be as a person. Am I going to be good and meritorious? How do I evaluate that? So if you have those ideas, you looking to Adam Smith, you can go in and now find some propositions. Now, he doesn't call them propositions, but they very much look to Vernon and me like he's stating some propositions. We'll call this first one the beneficence proposition. He says, actions of a beneficent tendency which proceed from proper motives seem alone to require reward because such alone are the approved objects of gratitude or excite the sympathetic gratitude of the spectator. First of all, the notion of beneficence. It's not a word we use a lot, but it's a very simple word that means good doing. So actions that do good, or tend to do good, that come from proper motives of wanting to do good, other people can feel that there's good being done, and they feel good about that, and you feel good about that with them. And then, because you're worried about how you fit in, you're wondering how this impartial spectator is looking at you and how you would conduct yourself. If somebody does something good, how would you respond? What do you do to that person? Those require reward, doing good back to that person. Another proposition, we call it the want of beneficence proposition. So he says beneficence is always free. It cannot be extorted by force. The mere want of it exposes to no punishment because it does no real positive evil. So what he's saying here is we would like to have beneficence, but if it doesn't come, we can't punish somebody for not giving it to us. Why? Because it didn't do any harm. We can be upset about it, we can think of him a really bad person, he goes on to say, but we don't go around in punishment. A third proposition, called the injustice proposition. He says, actions of a hurtful tendency which proceed from improper motives seem alone to deserve punishment. Notice that sounds very similar to the beneficence proposition. These two sentences follow each other in the same section of the book, one right after the other, and they're just basically changing beneficent to hurtful, proper to improper, and reward to punishment, and gratitude to resentment. It's just flipping on the opposite side. And so what he says here is that those deserve punishment. When somebody does harm to you, that deserves punishment. This one's not stated as closely to the other three, but you can pull it out somewhere else, where there's basically a version of the want of injustice proposition, or the lack of it. You don't reward people for doing the right thing. You don't say, oh, because you didn't harm someone, we reward you. I want you to notice the symmetry that's going through this. We reward beneficence and do not punish its wants. We punish injustice but do not reward its. We reward doing something good, which includes intending to do something good, because it does visible good. And we do not punish the want of doing and intending to do something good, because it does no visible harm. We punish doing something bad, which includes intending to do something bad, because it does visible harm, and we do not reward the want of doing and intending to do something bad, because it does no visible good. So Smith is saying, both in when we do things do good, and when we do bad, injustice, we see beneficence, there's a similarity, a sense of the depth of what he's talking about here. That goes beyond looking at different games and trying to piece together. He's kind of starting with this common core of how we react to very different situations and finding some symmetry. And we want to test that want of beneficence proposition. So how will we do that? Well, we look at this and we say, well, 1 is going to go down. Why would 2 choose to go right? How would you conduct yourself? Would you be meritorious and virtuous if you play right or you play down? And 1 is thinking about what 2 is imagining and says, well, if I'm positioned from the regular course of life, I expect people, when people do good things to me, that they require to be rewarded. They start off the game guaranteed with 12, and they either end up with 30 or 42. So 1 is doing something good for person 1. It also helps out person 1 because they're trying to do better from 12 to 18. Notice they still have, there's no non-satiation in this decision process. They know that more is preferred to less, but that's not the only rule that's applied. That's not the only way they think about themselves. You conduct yourself with much fuller understanding of how you deal with people which you live. So we predict then that 2 could play right, expecting to get them to reward 1 for the beneficence that he showed her. 1 fails to play down, 1 is not being good to 2. So we want to give an option now. Smith says you shouldn't punish them. You can't extort it. And so we're giving 2 the option to punish 1 for failing to go down the first place. Smith says no one should ever do that. If you're only looking about this in terms of your own local non-satiation of payoffs, 2 should never play that either because 12 is better than 10. So no one says anyone should be doing it if they do. We're just putting in this note to see, does anyone play that? So that's the first game that we're going to test from Adam Smith. Then to get the injustice proposition, if 2 wants to go down and take that $42 payoff, we're giving here the option for 1 to say, no, you're only going to get 4. Then I'll sacrifice $2, you don't get 42. When you should have done the justice and go right. Trying to go for this $42 is being unjust, but we're giving 1 the option to punish it. So just to remind you how we started this, here's what the previous game, just to get a sense of what happens, 8, 10 years later. We're going to have 49 pairs. We find that 27 of those play down. So it's a little bit more than we saw before. So we have the same basic baseline now, 8 to 10 years later. So those results before are replicating pretty robust. 2/3 of people are going to reward that beneficence of person 1. So what happens when we give 1 the option, 2 the option, to punish the want of beneficence of 1? Notice, 1s don't have beneficence anymore. A lot more of them end the game. That's different. Come back. But what do 2s do? Not a 1 plays down. So Adam Smith is batting 100% here. No one ever punishes. Now why are 1s not playing or down as much? This surprised us. Every experiment that I've run, I find something I did not expect. Something that surprises me. And in doing that, that's an opportunity for me to evaluate my own interpretation of what people do. So why are 1s not playing down? Because they are right not to do that. Because those 2s are not rewarding that beneficence. Half of them, or maybe more than half of them, are choosing 642. And for some reason, the 1s know that. And they're not being beneficent. So they know. We had no plan for this. We didn't expect any change here. We just wanted to know what happened over there. But adding that 1 extra note completely changed how they viewed the situation, the meaning they were reading in this game. When Adam Smith says that beneficence cannot be extorted, and we give them the option to extort, it starts messing up with all the beneficence that can possibly go on in the experiment. 1s don't act beneficently, and 2s don't reward it. We'll come back to why that might be in a second. When we look at the injustice proposition, we're going to start off with 81 pairs. And we see a lot more 2s starting to play down. Why? Because they know down here that if they can punish them. So 1s are more likely to play down. But we see fewer 2s playing right as a percentage. Are you acting beneficently when you say you have a club behind you saying, if you don't do it, I'll punish you? What do 1s do? They fold. Again, there's more meaning in just what we were putting into this by saying, allow them to punish. It changes the entire interpretation of the situation by putting in this threat down the road. People don't go into a beneficent action with the threat of punishing them. Differently, that changes how people behave. We find this unanticipated result, that 2s are not rewarding beneficence and 1s are not expecting them to, and so they're they're acting less beneficent in the first place. So we did two things at once. We added the second person to actually doing and clicking something, and we added the payoff down there of 10, 10. So let's take out the payoff for 10, 10. Is it the fact that 2 is doing something that messes up the sense of beneficence and rewarding of it? Or is it the fact that there's the payoff in it? This will tell us. If 1's play down the similar rate as here, then it's the fact that 2 does something. We have 38 pairs again. And you'll notice now we're back to 50-50. Basically, 1s are not trusting, and they are right to act beneficently because 2s reward that at a rate of 3 to 1. So it's not that 2 is doing something, it's the fact that 2 could possibly punish that upsets the interpretation of the meaning of the situation. And now we discovered something new. Here's a version. The reason why you kind of build these things slowly is because a lot of things go on in your act. Put all of these things, we can punish injustice there, punish the one beneficence up there, and we basically see the first time a couple people punish. So when you can punish down here, like, oh, maybe I can punish up there. You see people punishing at a little higher rate, 50% there. So people and 2s are rewarding that beneficence at a little less than 2. All these things are recombining here. To get at the wanted injustice proposition, Vernon had the idea, well, why don't we allow somebody that if 2 does reward it, that 1 could say, I'm going to reward you doing the right thing. I'm going to give you $2 extra for not having gone down. And we see that more of the same rate of people are playing down, and now 50% of them are not playing taking that 642. But there are actually 4 people who are so grateful for you not going to 642 that they actually will give them $2 extra. And I'm thinking about this, there's a little bit more going on than just rewarding the wants of injustice. Because 1 had actually done something beneficent. So there's a couple things going on to flesh out. But again, would have not have thought of trying this and seeing what people would do if we hadn't read Adam Smith. Spend a little time now, very popular game. And the scores of experiments have run. It's called the ultimatum game. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. There are many different sizes of pies, but the basic thrust of it is that one person proposes to split $20 with another person. The responder, unlike the dictator game, can accept or reject the offer. If the responder accepts it, they take that split, they go home. But if they reject it, they both go home with nothing. We're going to argue that Adam Smith would find this to be a rather odd game. Remember, I talked about the wanted beneficence. You cannot extort it by force. So when I am, as the proposer, proposing giving you money, being good to you, is it because you can say no? Are you extorting me as the second mover to do good for you? So a couple things are going on there. Is it because you're doing good that I'm giving it to you, or is it because I don't want you to punish me for doing good? So I want to use here, colleague Dan Hauser at George Mason ran this. This paper is published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and used this as a baseline. For $20, they find that with 62 pairs, 80% of all the data lie over here. People are not giving them that. You start going down here for 20% of the pie and only giving them 10% of the pie, and the rejections start going way up. Think about how this is an odd game. You are recruited to come into the laboratory, you're going to do this one time, and you get told, sit at this table, you get to be the respondent. And now you have to decide how much money to give. This is the game I signed up for. The responder says, I came in, I wanted that seat. Now I'm going to see how much money I can get out of them. There is an element here that people didn't consent to the rules. That this is the way the world is. How many times do we go into a relationship with another person where we didn't do it voluntarily? We didn't consent to doing it. So came up with this version of the experiment. So I want to start with simplifying it just in these two-person games. Person 2 here can either split the $24 equally, or take $22 for himself and only $2 for person 1. That would be the basic ultimatum game. But we're going to add consent to play to person 1. Now 1 says, yep, I'm willing to play this. If I don't want to play it, I'm just going to take $1, but I'm saying to the other person, I'm doing this now. They had a chance to say, I'm out of this. What happens to the rate at which people go here versus over there? And what's the rate at which people reject? We also want to compare that to what happens if we enlarge the pot. So here, 1 is consenting to play to get 12-12, or 1 can decide 2 goes to the left. 1 can take $1 more for himself, but $35 for the other person. The pie is twice as large, but notice 1 is still taking only getting 25% of it. So just like on those other experiments we showed you, where 20% of the pie, half of the people are rejecting it, we're going to see if 1 is consenting and the pie is growing, what is the rate at which people reject that very asymmetric distribution of the money. So we have 48 pairs, and sure enough, 3 people don't want to play this game. We're down to 45. Notice how many more are going to the right. We got 40% choosing to only give that person 9% from the pie. Before, 80% gave more than 20. It's a huge flip, just because 1 consented to play. How many of those? These over here. Every now and then, there's a person that you really don't understand, and it's this one right here. This is where players say, I really don't understand you. I gave you 12-12, and you still said no. What am I supposed to do? Well, what's happening over here? 11 is 60% are accepting. Before, 83% rejecting. It's a huge shift in which these people are willing to accept because 1 consented to play. They knew it was possible. They put themselves in a position to say, all right, I'm going to go that way, and they accepted. What happens when you enlarge the pie? Another 4 decide, no, I don't want to play this game. So it seems to be pretty robust here. About a little less than 10% saying, I just don't want to play that game. A lot of people are going to be unequal in payoffs. So these over here are accepting all of them. Now what's going on over here? So before we had half of the people in a basic ultimate game, and there are other studies that have that same, half the people, if you split it 80-20, are rejected. Over here, we find 94% of them accept. There are only 2 that are saying no. What are these 2 people saying? They're saying, no, I'd rather have no money than us having more money. The idea is here that Adam Smith caused us to think about what does it mean when we are at beneficent. That it has to be free. When you start adding these elements of extortion, of forcing to play it, the game isn't as simple as we might think it to be. That it's deeper and a lot more going on. And it takes us to develop some new experiments that we might not have thought of. To leave you with the idea that the theory of moral sentiments is still relevant here in 2017. And testable propositions about how people conduct themselves in life. That we are social beings, and that we conduct ourselves accordingly when we live with these other people. And that matters in our daily interactions, and it matters when we understand what people are doing in the laboratory. They are conducting themselves. They have a view of themselves, of what kind of person, a virtuous person, a meritorious person. And we need to incorporate that until we understand what people are doing